Dr. Elena Marlowe stared at the artifact in her hands, a strange relic that hummed with an energy she couldn't quite comprehend. It wasn't the first time she'd uncovered something ancient. She'd spent her entire career on forgotten worlds, unearthing relics of long-dead civilizations. But this was different. The piece, roughly the size of a fist, was smooth and metallic, inscribed with symbols that defied translation. More than that, it seemed to resonate with something deeper, almost like it was calling to her. Her mind raced as she examined the artifact, trying to make sense of it. She'd have been working alone on an abandoned space station in the dark outskirts of known space when the discovery was made. The station, once a thriving hub for scientific exploration, had been left in ruins after a mysterious event nearly a century ago. No one had been there for years, and yet, in a forgotten corner of the station's labyrinthine corridors, Elena had found this relic, hidden beneath the rubble, as if it had been waiting for someone to find it. The more she touched the artifact, the more it seemed to respond, subtle pulses of light shifting within the symbols. Elena's fingers trembled as a voice, almost imperceptible, echoed in her mind. At first, she thought it was a trick of her exhaustion or her mind playing tricks on her. But the voice grew clear, its tone like a distant whisper. "Awaken, Reclaimer." The words sent a chill through her spine. She pulled her hand back, her heart racing. The voice faded, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Elena glanced around the station, the hairs on the back of her neck prickling. She was alone. There was no one else here to hear it. Just as she began to question her sanity, a notification blinked on her datapad. It was a message from the Galactic Council. "Elena Marlowe, you are needed. Immediate response required." Her pulse quickened as she read through the transmission. They had discovered her find. They had been monitoring her archaeological work for years, but this was different. The message was short and direct. "The artifact you've uncovered is of significant interest. You will travel to the Council's headquarters for a briefing." The message was signed by Councillor Tanis, an old acquaintance from her past who now oversaw Galactic relic recovery. The tone was urgent, and Elena knew that whatever lay behind the artifact wasn't something they could ignore. The Council had always been tight-lipped about their true intentions, but Elena had long suspected there were secrets hidden within their walls. Secrets they were eager to keep buried. She looked down at the artifact again, feeling its weight in her hand, its strange power almost magnetic. There was no denying the feeling that this discovery was about to change everything. A voice from behind her snapped her out of her thoughts. "Elena Marlowe." She turned to find a tall, imposing figure standing in the doorway of the ruined station's control room. The figure was cloaked in a dark hooded robe, but the insignia on his chest was unmistakable, the symbol of the Galactic Reconnaissance Force. "I'm Commander Jarek Noor," he said, stepping forward. His voice was firm, but there was a hint of something else. Concern, perhaps. "I'm here to escort you to the Council. There are things you need to know about this artifact." Elena didn't move, still holding the relic. She had expected the Council's emissaries, but this was different. Her instincts told her that something was wrong. "How do you know about this?" she asked cautiously, eyeing the commander. His gaze never wavered, and a flicker of unease passed through his eyes. "I have my orders," he replied curtly. "The Council needs you. We're all in danger if this artifact isn't understood quickly." Elena hesitated for a moment, then placed the artifact into a protective case and sealed it shut. She had no idea what danger he was referring to, but she knew that she couldn't ignore the Council's summons. Not now, not after everything that had happened. "Lead the way, Commander," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of uncertainty swirling inside her. "I'm coming with you." As she followed him out of the station and into the darkness of space, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The artifact, and everything it represented, was drawing her into a web of secrets that might reshape the entire galaxy and her place within it. The transport ship lurched as it exited hyperspace, and Elena braced herself, her fingers curling around the cold metal of the armrest. Outside the small viewport, the dark expanse of space stretched endlessly, punctuated only by the dim glow of distant stars. She'd been on ships countless times, but the unease gnawing at her stomach had nothing to do with the jump. It was the feeling that something was wrong. Something had shifted since she left the station. Commander Noor stood at the console, his eyes fixed on the star map in front of him. Elena couldn't shake the impression that he was hiding something, and his constant avoidance of eye contact only made it worse. He hadn't said much since they'd left the station, and when he did speak, it was usually about the artifact or the mission. He had a way of speaking in clipped sentences, like a man who had a secret he wasn't ready to reveal. The sudden silence was broken by a voice from the comms panel. "Commander Noor," a cool, familiar voice rang out. "This is Councillor Tanis. Have you made contact with Dr. Marlowe yet?" Noor turned to the comm panel, his expression unreadable. "Affirmative, Councillor. We're on course to the designated planet." Tanis's voice was calm, but held a thread of urgency. "I'll be brief. You'll find the planet in Sector G9, hidden behind the gas cloud. It shouldn't exist. Records show no indication of its existence, yet it appears on every scan with increasing regularity. We believe the artifact is leading you there. Proceed with caution." Elena's ears perked at the mention of the gas cloud and the planet that shouldn't exist. Every scientist in the galaxy knew that space was filled with anomalies, but a hidden planet, one that didn't show up on any galactic maps or records. That wasn't just rare, it was impossible. Her pulse quickened as she glanced at the console, watching the digital readouts. The planet was real, there in front of them, just as the Council had said. "We'll be arriving shortly," Noor said, turning back to her. His voice, though steady, had a tinge of something, fear, maybe, or excitement. Elena wasn't sure, but the air felt charged now, thick with an unspoken tension. The transport ship shuddered as it made its final approach. The planet loomed ahead, hidden within the swirling clouds of nebula gas. It looked like a large, lifeless rock at first, a barren world unfit for habitation. But as they descended, Elena saw something far more startling. A network of structures, sprawling, decayed, and scattered across the surface. Ruins, like those of an ancient city, stretched for miles, many buried beneath centuries of dust and debris. The transport shuddered again, and the atmosphere grew heavy. Elena's breath hitched. She had no idea how the planet could have survived this long, hidden from the rest of the galaxy. The silence outside the ship was deafening, and the storm clouds swirling around the planet's surface seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm. "We're here," Noor announced, cutting through her thoughts. Elena barely noticed the ship's landing gear touch down on the rocky surface. She stood, hands shaking, as she gathered her pack and headed toward the airlock. The door hissed open, and the planet's strange atmosphere rushed in, a damp, cool breath that tasted faintly of ozone. Stepping out onto the surface, Elena's boots sank slightly into the soft alien soil. She looked around, taking in the eerily quiet world, the ruins scattered like bones from a long-dead creature. "This is unsettling," she muttered, the words echoing in the silence. "Stay focused, Dr. Marlowe," Noor replied, his voice sharp. We have work to do." As they began their descent toward the closest ruins, Elena noticed something strange. The surface of the planet seemed to hum, faint but unmistakable. The closer they got to the remnants of what looked like a large temple, the more she felt the ground beneath her feet vibrate. It wasn't a natural quake. It was like the planet itself was alive, responding to their presence. The team set up their equipment, scanning the ruins for any signs of life or energy signatures. But the readings were all over the place. Nothing made sense. The ruins didn't match anything from known records. And as Elena crouched to inspect the ancient stone walls, her fingers brushed against a carved symbol, one identical to the ones on the artifact. The hum grew louder, more urgent. "We're not alone," Elena whispered. A low, guttural rumble filled the air, followed by a sharp crack. Something massive shifted in the distance, casting a long shadow across the ruins. Elena's heart raced. "We need to get out of here. Now." But it was already too late. The ground beneath them trembled once more, and a deep, metallic voice echoed through the ruins. "Reclaimer, you have arrived." And with those words, the true nature of the planet and its long-forgotten secrets began to reveal itself. Elena's blood ran cold as the deep, resonant voice reverberated through the ruins, its source impossible to pinpoint. The very ground beneath her feet trembled, as though the planet itself had stirred from a centuries-long slumber. The air grew thick with an almost tangible energy, a low hum that vibrated in her chest. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet remained rooted to the spot. There was something irresistible about the presence of whatever was speaking, a primal pull that she couldn't explain. Commander Nor's hand instinctively went to his sidearm as he scanned their surroundings. His body was tense, his eyes darting back and forth, looking for any movement. The rest of the team, still unpacking the equipment, were clearly rattled, but trying to maintain their composure. "What is that?" Elena whispered, her voice barely audible over the oppressive hum. Nor's gaze met hers, but his expression offered little comfort. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here now." Before he could issue another command, the ground shook violently. A massive chunk of the temple structure ahead of them crumbled, revealing a vast, cavernous opening beneath the ruins. The air smelled of old, decayed metal, and an unnatural coldness poured from the depths. Elena felt a sudden rush of dread. This was not just an old, abandoned place. Something had been waiting here. The low rumble grew louder, as though a distant engine was coming to life. The shadow cast by the broken temple grew longer, and then Elena saw it, a figure emerging from the depths of the ruins. It was humanoid in shape, but its features were indistinct, as though covered by a thick, shifting mist. The thing's presence exuded power, and Elena's heart raced as she took an instinctual step back. The voice returned, but this time it wasn't just a whisper. It filled the air with a command that could not be ignored. "Reclaimer, you awaken me." The figure moved forward, its form becoming more defined with each step. Elena's pulse quickened as she studied it. Its body appeared to be made of some metallic substance, dark and reflective, but constantly shifting, as though its very structure was alive. Strange symbols pulsed across its surface, echoing the markings on the artifact she had found. "I told you, this was a mistake," Nor muttered under his breath, his hand still on his sidearm. "It's not supposed to be like this." Elena could barely hear him, her focus entirely on the figure now fully emerging from the ruins. She felt the artifact stirring at her side, pulsing as if it were responding to the entity in front of her. The figure stopped several meters away, its form radiating a strange energy that seemed to distort the very air around it. It raised its arm, and for a moment the ground beneath them seemed to quiet, as if time itself had slowed. "Reclaimer," the entity intoned once more. "You are the one who will restore what has been broken." Elena took a hesitant step forward. Restore. What? The figure's voice held an ancient weight, one that reverberated deep into her mind. This world was once the heart of a great civilization. We were the architects of the galaxy's foundation, but we were betrayed, our legacy lost to time, buried beneath the stars. Now you will rebuild what was shattered. A cold wave of realization crashed over Elena. This was no mere ancient ruin. This was the remains of something far older, something far more powerful. The entity was not a mere relic, it was a guardian, a remnant of a civilization that had shaped the galaxy itself. Her thoughts raced. Could this civilization be the one behind the artifacts scattered across the galaxy? The one the Council had hinted at, the one lost to time and war? And why had the Council sent her here? What were they hoping to find? "Why me?" Elena asked, her voice shaky, but driven by an intense curiosity. "What do you want me to do?" The figure did not answer immediately. Instead, its form flickered for a moment, as if it were processing the question. "The relic you carry," it said, its voice like a distant storm, "is the key. The Reclaimer must wield the artifact to unlock the path. Only then will the power of our civilization be returned to the galaxy. You must come with me. The others cannot help you. You alone are chosen." Elena's heart raced. The weight of its words hung in the air like a dense fog. She looked back at Nor and the rest of the team, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. Nor was the first to speak. "Elena, no. We need to leave. This is not what we were sent for." But Elena didn't hear him. Her gaze was fixed on the Guardian, on the pulsating artifact at her side. This was her moment. The artifact's call was undeniable, its hum growing louder, more insistent. She was being pulled forward by forces she didn't fully understand, yet something deep inside her knew that she had no choice. "I'll do it," she said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. "I'll restore what was lost." The Guardian's form shimmered as though acknowledging her decision. "The path will not be easy, Reclaimer, but you will not walk it alone." As the ground shook once more, the ruins around them began to shift, as though the planet itself was waking up. Something had been waiting for her all along. The real journey was just beginning. The ground beneath Elena's feet trembled again, but this time she didn't flinch. The figure, or Guardian, seemed to acknowledge her resolve. Its glowing symbols pulsed, the air around it shimmering with a strange energy. Elena glanced back at Nor and the rest of the team, their faces full of fear and confusion. They were frozen, unsure of what to do. But the moment was past. There was no turning back now. Nor spoke first, his voice tight with a mixture of authority and concern. "Elena, you can't be serious. We need to leave now. Whatever this is, it's not what we signed up for." Elena's hand instinctively tightened around the artifact at her side, its surface warm and alive. She could feel its power thrumming in her fingers, as though it recognized the connection between them. She turned her gaze back to the Guardian, who was still waiting, its form like a ghostly silhouette against the broken temple. "I have to do this." "Nor," Elena said, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. "The artifact chose me, and so did. Whatever this is." She motioned to the Guardian, whose gaze seemed to pierce her very soul. Nora's face darkened, but he knew better than to argue when Elena was set on something. "Fine. "But we're coming with you." Elena didn't protest. She knew it wasn't the time to argue. Instead, she turned back to the Guardian. Its voice echoed in her mind, no longer just a distant rumble, but something that seemed to speak directly to her thoughts. "Follow the path of the ancients," the Guardian intoned. "Only the Reclaimer can awaken the lost power. The others must remain behind." Elena felt a shiver run through her spine. This was no longer a simple mission. She wasn't just here to explore. She was here to restore something far greater than herself. The weight of the responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders, but she didn't hesitate. This was her purpose now. The Guardian's form flickered again, and the ruins around them seemed to shift. Large stone slabs rose from the ground, rearranging themselves into a bridge leading deeper into the heart of the ancient temple. The air grew colder, and the helm of the planet's energy deepened. Elena could feel the vibrations all around her, resonating with the artifact in her hand. She stepped forward, taking a deep breath, and the others followed, though their uncertainty was palpable. Nor hesitated at the edge of the newly formed bridge, his eyes darting nervously between Elena and the dark chasm ahead. "Are you sure this is the right move?" he asked quietly, though his voice held no trace of the commanding tone he usually used. "This could be dangerous. The Council didn't give us any real intel on this planet." Elena met his gaze and nodded. "We don't know everything, but we can't ignore what's happening here. This place, it's connected to the artifact, and I think it's been waiting for me." The bridge began to hum louder, and the stone pathways before them shifted, as if the temple itself was reacting to their presence. Every step they took echoed through the cavernous expanse, but it was the stillness that unnerved Elena the most. Despite the continuous vibrations, the space was eerily quiet, the shadows cast by the strange, glowing symbols feeling almost alive. As they walked deeper into the temple, the walls seemed to close in around them. The air grew even colder, and the ground beneath them grew slick with some unnatural moisture. Elena felt a pull in her chest, a tug urging her onward. The Guardian's presence was always just ahead, guiding them, but it was silent now. Its form remained an indistinct shadow at the far end of the path. Suddenly, they arrived at the temple's core, a massive chamber with an altar at its center. Strange markings were etched into the floor, converging on a large circular platform. The symbols matched those on the artifact, and the air hummed with an intense energy. Elena approached the platform, her hand outstretched, and the artifact began to glow. "This is it," she whispered. The realization hit her all at once. She was the key. The artifact had led her here, to the very heart of this forgotten place, and now it wanted her to activate it. But she knew this was only the beginning. There were no instructions, no map, only the whispers of the past urging her forward. As she stepped onto the platform, the symbols on the floor around them began to glow with a light so bright it almost blinded her. The artifact in her hand pulsed, and for a moment she could see images, visions of a civilization long gone. Vast cities, starships that glided through the galaxy with ease, and strange alien landscapes she couldn't comprehend. But among the images, one thing stood out, a great catastrophe, a moment of destruction so powerful it tore the fabric of reality itself. Elena gasped as the vision shifted. She could see a massive starship, its hull shattered, its people scattered across a dead world. A voice whispered in her mind, ancient and filled with sorrow. The Reclaimer will restore the lost, but she must first unlock the truth of the past. As the vision faded, Elena's heart pounded in her chest. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but the questions were only growing. What had happened to this civilization? What had they uncovered, And why had they been destroyed? And most importantly, what was she about to awaken? The platform's energy surged, pulling her deeper into the mystery and the danger that awaited. The moment Elena's feet made contact with the circular platform, the ground seemed to split beneath her. A sudden surge of energy shot through her, and she gasped as her vision blurred. The artifact in her hand fled to life, casting blinding light across the chamber. Her mind swirled with fragmented images and voices, each more jumbled than the last. She could hear echoes of a time long past, but they felt too distant to reach. The chamber around her shifted, its walls stretching upward as the floor beneath her cracked and buckled, revealing a vast, hollow space below. Elena felt her knees wobble, but she didn't dare look away from the platform. She was no longer in control of her body. Her actions were guided by something else, an unseen force driving her forward. A voice, deep and ancient, filled her mind again. This time, it was clearer, more forceful. The time has come, Reclaimer. The truth awaits. Elena's breath quickened as the artifact in her hand pulsed in response, its energy pouring into her like a torrent. Her vision cleared for a split second, and she saw a scene unfold before her eyes. The vast city of an ancient civilization stretched out beneath a darkened sky, its towering structures glistening with what looked like silver and gold. Ships of unimaginable design soared above the skyline, their engines humming with quiet power. The people, tall and graceful, moved through the streets, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. The voice continued. We were once the architects of the stars, masters of creation, but we were fools, blinded by ambition. Suddenly, the peaceful vision shattered. The sky turned a deep crimson, and the ground beneath the city began to tremble violently. Elena could feel the terror of the people in her bones, their screams echoing through the hallways of time. The city, once majestic, began to crumble, its towering structures breaking apart as fires consumed everything in sight. We sought knowledge beyond our reach. We unlocked the gates to forces we could not control. The images grew darker, the chaos intensifying. Elena's pulse raced as the vision flickered and morphed. She could see vast rifts opening in space itself, sucking the city into a void of darkness. A final, desperate shot. A starship, broken and lost, its crew scattered among the stars. Elena could feel their desperation, their last cries reaching out from beyond the void. The voice echoed one last time, cold and remorseful. And so we fell. We were lost to the stars, but we left behind our legacy, waiting for the Reclaimer. Elena stumbled back, the vision dissipating as the platform's glow faded to a dull hum. Her body trembled, a deep sense of sorrow and loss washing over her. The weight of the past hung heavily on her shoulders. The civilization she had glimpsed was no more than a shattered memory. They had sought to reach beyond their limits and paid the price for it. But what was their legacy? What had they left behind? The guardian's voice interrupted her thoughts, now soft and reverent. The truth is within you, Reclaimer. You are the key to our rebirth. You will restore what we lost, but only if you understand the price we paid. Elena's mind swam with the implications of what she had just witnessed. The civilization had unlocked some kind of forbidden power, something so vast and dangerous it had torn apart not just their world, but their very existence. The rifts they had opened, the forces they had unleashed, it was all tied to the artifact. And now she was the one tasked with restoring it all. Her gaze fell to the artifact, still glowing faintly in her hand. The symbols on its surface seemed to shift, swirling as though alive. The connection between them felt deeper now, more intimate. It was as if the artifact had become a part of her, its power thrumming through her veins, urging her forward. "You're right," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. "I am the Reclaimer." Nora's voice called out from behind her, breaking her trance. "Elena, we need to get out of here. This place. It's not safe." But Elena didn't respond immediately. She couldn't. She was still grappling with the weight of the vision, the responsibility now resting squarely on her shoulders. The past had laid its truth bare before her, and now she was bound to it. The platform beneath her began to rumble once more, and the symbols on the walls shifted again. A doorway, previously hidden, slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a long passageway leading deeper into the heart of the temple. Elena's heart pounded in her chest, but her resolve was firm. "We're not leaving," she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "We have to go further. There's more to this than we know. More I need to understand." Nor stepped forward, his expression tight. "Elena, this is madness. We don't know what we're dealing with." But Elena was already moving toward the opening, the pull of the artifact guiding her every step. There was no turning back. The future of this lost civilization, and perhaps her own, was intertwined with what lay beyond that door. She had to see it through. The guardian's voice resonated in her mind again, soft but insistent. "The path of the Reclaimer is not easy. The price will be steep, but the future of all is in your hands." And with that, Elena stepped into the dark passageway, the unknown stretching out before her. Elena stepped into the dark passageway, the air thick with the scent of ancient stone and dust. The glow from the artifact illuminated the path ahead, casting long, shifting shadows on the walls. Each step echoed in the stillness, the only sound her breath and the distant hum of the temple's energy. She could feel the weight of the universe pressing in on her as she moved deeper into the forgotten heart of this once great civilization. Nora and the others followed reluctantly, their footsteps faltering behind her. Elena could feel their unease, their uncertainty. They were explorers, scientists, not warriors or archaeologists. They weren't prepared for this. But they had come this far, and they couldn't turn back now. "Elena, listen to me." Nora's voice cut through the silence, low and urgent. "This is insane. We don't even know what's down here. We've already seen enough to know this place isn't safe. You can't keep going. We need to find a way out." Elena didn't slow her pace. Her mind was far beyond the surface worries of the crew. She had glimpsed the remnants of a civilization destroyed by its own hubris, and now she felt a duty, no, a calling, to restore it. The artifact pulsed in her hand, guiding her, urging her forward. She couldn't ignore it. "We're not leaving," Elena said, her voice firm. "We're here to uncover the truth, and are not turning back now. If there's a way to fix what was broken, I'm going to find it." Nor opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, the ground beneath them trembled. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, and the walls seemed to pulse with an unseen force. The air grew colder, and a sudden chill swept through the passageway, raising goosebumps on Elena's arms. The artifact in her hand flared to life, its light intensifying, filling the narrow corridor with an ethereal glow. From the shadows ahead, a figure emerged. It was tall, humanoid but distinctly alien, its body composed of shifting light and shadow. Its features were indistinct, as if it were made of smoke or mist, and yet it radiated an undeniable presence. Elena's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't flinch. She had seen the Guardians before. This must be another one, another entity tied to the ancient civilization. The figure raised a hand, and the hum of the temple grew louder, resonating in Elena's chest. The energy in the air was thick now, charged with a strange, almost painful intensity. The Guardian's presence was overwhelming, but Elena felt no fear. She felt purpose. "You are the Reclaimer," the figure intoned, its voice a strange mix of harmony and dissonance. "You have come to claim what was lost. But do you understand the price?" Elena nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the words settle within her. "I understand. The past cannot be undone. But I must try." The figure seemed to consider her for a long moment before nodding. "The path you walk is perilous, Reclaimer. The forces you seek to control have been forgotten for a reason. To awaken them is to risk the very fabric of existence." Elena stepped forward, unwavering. "I'm not afraid of the risks. If the people of this civilization were willing to sacrifice everything to reach beyond their limits, then I must do the same. I must understand what went wrong. Only then can I restore what was lost." The Guardian's form flickered, its shifting light casting eerie shadows on the walls. It seemed to hesitate, then spoke again, its tone softer, almost sorrowful. "You do not know what you ask, Reclaimer. The knowledge you seek is not just a key, it is a weapon. A weapon that can tear apart the very stars. To restore what was lost will cost you more than you know." Elena's grip on the artifact tightened. She could feel its power coursing through her veins, a cold fire that burned with potential. "I have no choice," she said, her voice resolute. "I am the Reclaimer. It is my destiny to restore this civilization. I will bear the cost." The Guardian was silent for a moment before it stepped aside, allowing Elena and her team to continue down the passage. As they moved past, the Guardian spoke once more, its voice distant but clear. "Then go, Reclaimer. But remember, the truth you seek may destroy you. Only the worthy can withstand the weight of the past." Elena didn't respond. She didn't need to. The Guardian had said all it needed to say. She knew the risks, and yet she couldn't turn back now. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but it was the only path that mattered. The weight of the past, the destruction of the civilization, and the power of the artifact, it was all leading her to this moment. The passageway opened up into another chamber, far larger than the ones before. In the center of the room stood an enormous pedestal, upon which rested a crystalline structure. It pulsed with energy, its surface shifting like liquid, and beneath it, an inscription glowed in an ancient language Elena didn't understand, but she knew instinctively that it was the final key to unlocking the civilization's lost power. She stepped forward, feeling the pull of the artifact and the crystalline structure. The air around her hummed, charged with the energy of the ancient world, as though the very fabric of the temple was alive. She could feel it. She was getting closer to the heart of the mystery. The civilization had been destroyed, but its legacy was here, waiting for her. And with each step she took, Elena knew that the cost of restoring what was lost would be greater than she had ever imagined. Elena reached the crystalline structure, her heart pounding in her chest. The pedestal beneath it was inscribed with intricate symbols that shimmered faintly as if alive, and the very air seemed to hum with the power of the artifact she carried. Her breath hitched as the force within the chamber seemed to press in on her, both exhilarating and suffocating. This was it, the culmination of her journey. But deep inside, a knot of dread twisted within her. The Guardian's words echoed in her mind. "The truth you seek may destroy you." The artifact in her hand pulsed, its glow matching the rhythm of her racing heartbeat. Elena could feel it. The knowledge that awaited her was beyond anything she had ever imagined. But was she truly prepared for it? Was anyone ever truly prepared for the weight of the past? She shook the thought away. There was no turning back now. If there was a way to restore the lost civilization, she had to discover it. She had to understand what had caused its downfall, Why they had sought knowledge so vast, so dangerous. It was the only way to ensure humanity's future didn't repeat the same mistakes. Slowly, Elena placed the artifact on the pedestal. The moment it touched the crystalline surface, a shockwave of energy rippled through the chamber. The room itself seemed to breathe, its walls expanding and contracting as if the temple were alive. The symbols on the pedestal flared to life, their meaning finally making sense to Elena. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. A voice, low and resonant, filled her mind once more. You have come to claim the legacy of the lost ones. Do you understand what it entails, Reclaimer? Elena took a deep breath and nodded, even though she wasn't entirely sure. I understand the risks. I know what happened to them. But if there is a way to restore what was lost, I will do it. I will bear whatever burden is necessary. The crystalline structure pulsed brighter, and the ground beneath her feet rumbled. The air grew thick with a sense of finality, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. You are chosen, the voice said, but you must know that the knowledge you seek is not just a gift, it is a curse. To reclaim what was once lost, you must give up what you hold dear. The past cannot be undone without sacrifice. What will you surrender to restore the future? Elena's mind raced. She had always been willing to sacrifice for a cause, but this was different. The voice's words reverberated in her skull. What will you surrender? She turned to face Nor, who stood a few paces behind her, his face filled with anxiety and disbelief. His expression was tight, and he seemed to want to speak, but the fear in his eyes silenced him. Behind him, the rest of the team stood frozen, unsure of what was happening. Elena's heart ached as she glanced at them. She had brought them all into this unknown, dangerous journey. They had followed her into this ancient ruin, trusting her judgment. But she could feel it now, deep in her bones. This knowledge, this power, it wasn't just something that could be handed over without a cost. The price would be steep. That much was certain. But the voice, the past cannot be undone without sacrifice. That was what haunted her. What would she lose? What could she afford to lose? The artifact in her hand vibrated with an intensity she hadn't felt before, and a sudden wave of dizziness overtook her. She staggered but steadied herself, reaching out to steady the pedestal. Her breath came in short bursts, as her mind flickered with images of the lost ones, the shattered civilization, and the terrifying forces they had unleashed. She saw their downfall again, their world breaking apart, their ships consumed by voids in space. And then the silence. A civilization lost to time. Are you ready? Nor's voice broke through her thoughts, a hesitant question laced with fear. Elena took another steadying breath, her heart heavy with the weight of what she was about to face. This was more than just a mission. It was more than just restoring the lost civilization. It was a test of who she was. What kind of person would she become after this? What would remain of her once the price had been paid? I have to be, Elena whispered, though doubt lingered like a shadow in her mind. She could feel the pull of the past, the energy of the artifact surging through her once more. The temple was shifting around her, as if waiting for her to make her decision. The voice spoke again, more insistent now. Do not hesitate, Reclaimer. The knowledge is yours to claim, but know this. Once you take it, there is no going back. The future you seek will be built on the ashes of what was. The ground rumbled beneath her feet again, a tremor of anticipation that seemed to echo through her soul. Elena's grip tightened on the artifact, and she closed her eyes for a moment, allowing the weight of the decision to settle in her bones. There was no turning back. The forces she was about to awaken, the knowledge she was about to claim, it would change everything. Let it be done, Elena said, her voice steady, though her heart beat faster than ever before. I will bear the burden. I will restore what was lost. The light from the pedestal blazed, engulfing the entire chamber in an explosion of radiant energy. Elena gasped as the power surged through her, the knowledge of the lost ones flooding her mind in a torrent. The universe seemed to warp around her, the past and future colliding in a singular moment. She felt her consciousness expanding, reaching beyond the confines of time and space. And then, in the blink of an eye, the vision was gone. The room fell silent, and Elena was left standing at the center of it all, the weight of what she had done settling over her like a shroud. The artifact in her hand no longer pulsed with energy. It was still, and so was she. But Elena knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same again. The silence that enveloped the chamber felt both profound and suffocating. Elena stood motionless, her breath shallow, as the last echoes of the energy surge faded into nothingness. Her hands trembled slightly, the artifact now cold and inert in her grasp, its brilliant glow extinguished. But in her mind, the knowledge of the lost ones was still alive, a tempest of memories, visions, and understanding crashing over her like an unstoppable tide. The walls around her seemed to pulse, as if the very temple recognized the change. The ancient ruin had been awakened, but it wasn't just the structure that had changed. Elena could feel the weight of history pressing upon her, a connection to the civilization that had once flourished here. She had glimpsed their triumphs, their ambitions, their catastrophic mistakes. And now she was their final chance for redemption. Nor and the rest of the team were still behind her, frozen in place. They had witnessed the explosion of light and energy, but remained unsure of what had truly happened. Elena turned to face them, her mind struggling to integrate the flood of knowledge now coursing through her. What just happened? Nor asked, his voice a mixture of awe and fear. Elena, what did you do? Her eyes met his, and for a moment she didn't know how to explain. How could she describe the visions, the weight of the choices she had just made? How could she tell him that the very fabric of time and space had shifted, that she had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations within the blink of an eye? I've seen it, Elena said, her voice distant. The rise of the lost ones, their glory, their mistakes, and the way they destroyed themselves. Nor's expression shifted from confusion to concern. He stepped forward cautiously, his eyes searching hers for any sign of the person he had once known. Elena, I don't understand. What does that mean? You're scaring me. She shook her head, trying to gather her thoughts. It's not just their history. It's... She paused, overwhelmed by the enormity of what she had learned. It's everything. The power, the knowledge. They were too ambitious. They reached too far, and they paid the price for it. I can fix it, Nor. I have to. Nor's face hardened with skepticism. Fix it? How? What can you possibly do with all of this? You don't even know the full scope of what you've unlocked. I do now, Elena replied, her voice steady but resolute. I understand it all. The systems they built, the networks they created, the tools they used. I can repair the damage. I can rebuild what was lost. But there was a pause as the weight of her words sank in. Rebuilding wasn't just about restoration. It meant reawakening ancient technologies and capabilities that had been buried for millennia. It meant tapping into forces that could reshape entire worlds, forces that could be as dangerous as they were transformative. Can you? Nor's voice wavered. Can you really control it, Elena? The price you've paid. What's left of you? Her eyes locked with his, the turmoil within her threatening to spill over. She could feel the echoes of the lost one's downfall. A whisper, a warning that had been passed down through the ages. She was the Reclaimer, but she was not invincible, not immune to the cost of what she had just unleashed. But Elena knew this was her destiny now. She had seen it all. The knowledge of the Lost Ones wasn't a curse, it was a gift. It was the key to humanity's future, but it could also be a weapon capable of destruction. "I'm not the same person I was," Elena said softly, "but I can make it right. I can guide us through this, if you trust me." Nor stared at her for a long moment, the fear in his eyes slowly giving way to a reluctant understanding. He had seen her determination before, her willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. And now, in the face of an unimaginable power, he saw it again. Elena was not the same woman he had once known, but that didn't change the fact that she was the only one who could save them all. "I trust you," he finally said, his voice steady. "I'll follow you, Elena. We'll do this together." The rest of the team nodded in agreement, though their faces were still marked with uncertainty. They were scared, unsure of what lay ahead, but there was no turning back. They had come this far, and they would see it through. Elena's heart swelled with gratitude for their support, but she knew the real work was just beginning. The path ahead would be perilous. The power she had unlocked could reshape the galaxy, but it was a force that could easily be corrupted. The Lost Ones had proven that. But Elena had something they hadn't: hope. Hope for a future that didn't repeat the mistakes of the past. "I'll guide us," Elena said, her voice clear and strong. "We will rebuild. We will restore what was lost." And with that, Elena led her team out of the chamber, back into the world where the forces she had unleashed would begin their slow, careful reclamation. The universe had changed in an instant, and though the road ahead was uncertain, Elena knew that her journey was just beginning. The Lost Ones had paid the ultimate price for their knowledge, but humanity would rise higher. It would not fall again. It was time for the Reclaimer to rebuild.